What's up everyone? My name is Cody Engel, and I went from failing a Visual Basic programming course in high school to making 6 figures a year as a software engineer. In this video, I'm going to kind of walk you through how I did that. But first, be sure to smash the like button so other people can see this video, because it'll let the YouTube algorithm know that people enjoy this video and it'll recommend it to more people. I enjoyed working with computers, and it was more like on the hardware side, and so doing like system administration things, I was like, I'll be a system administrator. But I was also, with that, all of that time working with computers, I was like, you know what? Actually, instead of a system administrator, I'll be a programmer. That's what I'll do. And so I took a Visual Basic programming course in high school, which I did really poorly in. I got a D, and then I was like, all right, programming is not for me. I didn't get anything out of that course. I was going to take a follow-on course for it. It was like Visual Basic Programming 2, and I couldn't take that because I got a D, so I didn't meet the prereqs. So I was like, all right, I'll take sewing. That worked out better, to be honest, but I digress. But then kind of after high school, went to community college because that was kind of the thing to do at that point. I was like, I'm not going to be able to get into a university because I didn't do well with my grades. There was just a lot of stuff going on in my life where I did not do well in high school. I went to community college. I failed a math course. I failed a music history course. I did well in a film class. I did well in a biology class. I think I did poorly and well in a couple other classes. I can't really remember. But kind of at that point, I was like, maybe college isn't for me. And so I kind of went from in high school being like, all right, network administration, I'll work in IT, to I'll be a programmer, all the way to nope, none of this is for me. I can't do anything. I ended up taking a break from community college for a while. I was driving forklifts at the time for a hardware store. That was fun. It paid well. But I also enjoyed video games, and I enjoyed technology too. So I was running a video game blog at the time that took off and did pretty well. I was running a technology blog that didn't do as well, but it was doing okay. It was fun to write for and all of that. It was also a point in time where I was able to work more with web technologies. I was able to modify PHP code snippets. Was updating WordPress themes that were using HTML and CSS and some JavaScript. And so it started to kind of build up my confidence a little bit more in terms of what I can do with programming. At that point in time, I decided that I would blog full-time because it could replace my income from driving forklifts, which was working out okay. I didn't really get a lot of support from my family because at that point in time, I think it was 2009, 2010, and making money from the internet was just unheard of. So they still really wanted me, they're like, what are you gonna do with your life, kid? And so there's a lot of just external pressure of just all right, I guess I have to go back to school. At that point in time, I was like, all right, there's this place called Rasmussen College. They're regionally accredited, so if I end up not wanting to stay there, I can transfer to a university or somewhere else. The credits will just transfer okay. And I went there to specialize in IT. I ended up doing well just because, again, in high school, I enjoyed working with computers. I was writing, I had a blog for video games. I had a blog for technology. Just from administrating those blogs, I just inherently just picked up things technology-wise. I also knew how to build computers. And so it made sense. It was something that I could succeed in. I did well in the courses I took, so well, in fact, I was able to become a tutor. That kind of helped build up my confidence a lot, and really feel all right, I know what I'm doing. I just spent the last couple of years feeling like I can't do anything, and now this came along with tutoring, and I'm feeling pretty good. At that point in time, I was like, all right, well, with the WordPress blogs, I'm also modifying these templates. It's getting into programming. Then I purchased a PHP and MySQL book, and I learned some PHP and some MySQL, as you would with that sort of a book. And I was like, all right, actually, I think I can do this. And at the time, I looked up salaries, and I was like, all right, well, how much does a network administrator make? I'm like, okay. And I was like, all right, how much does a programmer make? And I was like, oh, programmers according to the government, make like $100,000 out of a year out of college. And so I was like, all right, I'm just gonna do that. So I ended up applying at NIU. I was put on the wait list because I didn't do well in high school. I didn't do well in community college. I was doing well at Rasmussen, but it wasn't quite enough to just get accepted right away. Also, I think my ACT scores weren't good enough for their standards and everything, which makes sense. Like my ACT scores were bad. I asked my supervisor at Rasmussen, hey, can you just write a letter of recommendation for me? So he was like, yeah, sure. You know, I love working with you. Like you're smart, you're bright. Like, absolutely. He wrote the letter of recommendation. I got accepted into NIU. And my first semester there, I was like, all right, like I'll take a intro to programming and all of that. Did well in that class. It was with C++. It just made a lot of sense. It was really, really fun and enjoyable. I'll kind of leave it at that because I can probably ramble on about that class. In that first semester, I decided that, you know, I wanted to still like work and do some stuff. And I found that NIU had an opening for their housing and dining help desk. So I applied there. I ended up getting the job, I think largely because of the stuff I was doing at Rasmussen. I just was able to answer a lot of the interview questions well, and it set me up for success in that job as well. Like I ended up doing really well there. I think towards the end of my time at the help desk, I was closing out the most tickets. I was also at that point a lab technician as well. So what that meant was like I got access to like key box codes where I could access the computer labs. And part of it was like, you know, you have to like set your own hours to go like work on printers and computers, and it was just great. It was awesome. Like I can't say enough great things about it. Also during that time at NIU, I proceeded to fail pre-algebra twice. I ultimately took a simplified math route, which included business calc and discrete math, which those made sense to me. Those were good. And so I was really grateful that NIU offered that to mathematically challenged individuals like myself that still wanted to pursue a career in software development. So I'm curious, like, how do you feel about math? Do you enjoy doing it? Do you dislike math? Just let me know in the comments below. I would love to know like what others that are watching this video, like how they feel about math. Math aside, while I was at NIU, you know, again, I was doing well in my computer science courses. The intro to computer science was good. I struggled a bit in the assembly programming class. I think it was more like the homework I just didn't really get, but the exams I did well in. But for the most part, I did pretty well in the computer science courses. And because of my work that I was doing at the help desk, when an opportunity arose for me to work on the dev team for housing and dining, I was able to get the job. I applied, went through the interview process, got a job there. So at that point in time, I was still at NIU, but I was working part-time as a developer, doing PHP, MySQL, JavaScript stuff. I found a mentor who was really helpful. He taught me a ton of stuff just about like, you know, instead of writing like code in a university academic standpoint, like writing code that people understand. So like writing readable code, self-documenting code, better understanding like what is object-oriented programming and how does it actually apply to stuff. And at that point, like that was like one of the first times in my career, actually probably the first time in my career where like things just started to really take off in terms of I understand programming now. Like I understand like how you actually do this in the real world, which is really beneficial when you're trying to get a job in the real world. Because of what I was doing at the dev team, it set me up really well for getting a job a semester before graduation. So I already had a job offer in hand from a pretty large insurance company. But one thing that I would kind of like go back to though, that I do want to like touch on because I think it is important for this part of the story, but I can't really figure out how to like fit it in well, is how did I actually go about getting that interview in the first place? And to get that interview, what it involved was several semesters beforehand, I started going to the career fair and internship fair and just talking to recruiters. And so by the time I was ready to actually go and get a job, I had already interviewed for an internship. I ended up not taking the internship just because the dev team was paying the same amount of money and it was a much easier commute. So I just stayed there. The internship interview process gave me experience in interviewing. And then I already was comfortable talking to recruiters. Like at that point when I was going to the career fair, I knew exactly what to do. If you're curious like how to handle career fairs or internship fairs, just let me know in the comments below. I'd love to do a follow-up video on that. I think for the purposes of this video, it would get way too into the weeds, but I would love to do a follow-up on that. So let me know if you'd be interested. I was comfortable talking with recruiters, and so that ended up getting me the interview. And then again, because I had the real world experience of the dev team, I had already interviewed for an internship. I just had that experience already. Like I kind of knew what to expect. And so I ended up getting the job. It was working with web technologies. I was going to be working with, well, I didn't know at the time, but I ultimately ended up working on something that it had to run well with Internet Explorer 8 or maybe 6. I think 8. I think at that point 6 was already pretty much gone, but it had to work well with Internet Explorer 8. Everything else didn't really matter. I found myself working in that job out of college, just not enjoying the work, because at the dev team, you know, we were working with like brand new technologies. We were doing like all these cool things with design and all of that, and I was enjoying that. So working with IE 8 and like having to like just make really simple web apps, I was like, this isn't for me. I don't want to do this. It was okay, but I ended up not staying there too long. I found another job with a startup where I was making a little bit less. And so I guess it would be helpful to kind of talk about salary as well. So my first job out of college, I was making $60,000 a year. The startup I joined as the next step in my career, I went down to $57,000 a year, but I was getting like 0.5% of company ownership. I was their only Android developer. And so that gave me really good experience in just understanding like, all right, like I can build Android apps. Like I had been doing it in college as well, but this was my first time like to really like work with other people on an app. And so like I was using like Photoshop to do like mock-ups. The experience I got at the startup was great. And I can probably like talk about that experience for a long time. So I'm not going to. Again, anytime, like just let me know if you want me to expand on more of this in the comments below. Just leave a timestamp to like what it is, or just like say like what I was talking about. I'd be happy to do another follow-up video. But that startup that I was working for ended up going under. Unfortunately, they also had me relocate from DeKalb, Illinois to Milwaukee. So that wasn't great because they went under, and so I was kind of scrambling to find a job. I ultimately found this digital agency. They were looking for a web developer, but secretly they also wanted someone with mobile experience, and I checked both boxes for that. I started off working with C# and MS SQL, but I eventually transitioned to working almost exclusively full-time on Android projects and working with a really talented iOS developer, really helpful just from like a mentorship standpoint. He was kind of similar to the developer that I was working with at NIU. Like he was just really bright. He was working on like side projects and all of that. Salary-wise, I was making $65,000 a year, so a little bit more of a raise. Most I was making ever. I found myself not enjoying the work as much as I thought I would. And a lot of it came down to like not having like that ownership of what I was working on. Like I was working on client specific things, and so whatever the client wants, the client was going to get. I could do my best to try and talk them out of things, but ultimately they're going to pay the bills. So if they want me to do something that I don't think is going to be successful for them, I mean, it's not my thing. I ended up actually going back to the company I worked for right out of college because I enjoyed like just the enterprisey, the way the company was set up. I just didn't enjoy the work. I went back to that company as a senior Android engineer. This was the first time in my career that I could like say I was a senior engineer, even though at the startup I was a lead engineer. Like it was, I mean, I was a team of one, so who was I leading? It gave me a salary bump, so I went from $65,000 to $77,000 a year. It gave me the opportunity to relocate out of Wisconsin back to Illinois. I ended up moving to Hoffman Estates, and that made the commute a little bit better than what I was doing originally, which was out in DeKalb. Again, kind of left that part out, but yeah, I was commuting from DeKalb to like Northbrook, Illinois, which was a brutal commute. So being Hoffman Estates to Northbrook, it was much easier. It was much more bearable. At that point in time, I was doing, again, like Android development. It was what I wanted to do. I had a really great manager. She set me up for success. And I was actually like leading the project that I was working on. So we were working on a white label roadside assistance product. It was fun. It was great. We got to learn a lot about agile development. And actually, while I was there, I was able to get a promotion from like senior engineer 1 to senior engineer 2, I saw my salary bump up a little bit more. It went up to $87,000 a year. A little bit after that, I kind of realized I don't know that I'm enjoying working for a big company. And I don't know that I'm enjoying living in the suburbs. So I started interviewing elsewhere. And so at that point in my life, I had the option of, all right, I can go move to California. I had the opportunity to interview with like Uber, Google, Facebook, or I can stay local and I can just move to Chicago. Ultimately, I ended up going with Chicago and moving there for a startup in HR tech. And I was working as a senior Android engineer at that point. They offered me $105,000 a year starting out. So, going from 87 to 105, like that was great. I also had a 10% bonus target. So that was the first time in my career I was getting a bonus. They offered some vesting or some options as well, but the vesting cliff was weird, so I won't get into that. But this is like the next point in my career where I felt like things were starting to take off again, because I had a lot of, that experience working at the startup. I had the experience working for a digital agency where I was just like crank out code like left and right. And then I had more experience as like a lead engineer from the company I was just coming from. All of that combined, when I was working with a team of 4 Android engineers, one of which was the lead. And then he was also like the manager in a way too. Like they kind of set that up weird. That was a weird situation. I'll probably get into that in a second. But then like there's some junior engineers that I got to work with and mentor, and just really enjoyed the work that I was doing. The team worked really well together. We were like closing out features left and right, and it was great. It was honestly the first time in my career like I felt like I was doing like really good modern Android development. The downside to that was, it was a startup, the way that they set things up. And I think actually like when I was leaving the company, the CEO was talking with me and he was like, yeah, that probably wasn't a great idea. And like the thing that wasn't a great idea was they had like a lead engineer, and like the lead engineers would have one-on-ones with engineers on their team. But then they would also have an engineering manager who would like have one-on-ones with the engineering leads. And so it just created like this weird layer of bureaucracy where like my like engineering lead who was having the one-on-ones with me couldn't really do much to help my career. He could put in a good word for me, but it ultimately was the manager who wasn't having one-on-ones with me. So it just created this weird thing. I ended up deciding to interview at some other places. And this was actually the first time in my career where from interviewing, I had job offers from every single company that I interviewed with. So if you want to know how I interview and how I'm able to get job offers pretty consistently at this point, be sure to subscribe. I plan on doing a follow-up video for that because I think that can be a huge topic in itself. But anyway, got job offers from every company. I was able to pick from the one that I wanted. And I ultimately went with another startup. They didn't offer equity, but they had really good benefits. The starting salary was $125,000 a year. The bonus target was also 10%, but they paid it out quarterly instead of annually. So that was kind of nice. Every quarter I would get an extra, boost to my paycheck. And this was another point in my career where it really took off. I was one of the first Android engineers hired on the team. My first day I met the second Android engineer, their first Android engineer, like we were both hired at the same time. He and I built the team up together. We built up the product. We really got to build a team in the way that like he and I thought would make a lot of sense. And it ended up being a super successful team. I also was promoted there from senior engineer to a staff engineer. So that was really helpful. At that point, I think when I was leaving the company, my ending salary was like $143,500 because that's how it works when you get like percentage increases. That is kind of my story at this point, sort of. In 2020, I ended up leaving to go to a retail e-commerce company. They sold box subscriptions. It wasn't really for me, but that company, like I ended up, again, like growing my income more. Like the target salary was over $200,000 a year. It was like $155,000 base, and then I believe it was 30% target bonus. But I ended up leaving and going and working for the company that I work at now. But that's kind of my story of how I went from not being able to program or like feeling like I couldn't program to being successful. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to click the like button, be sure to subscribe. In the comments section below, let me know like what parts of this video you enjoyed. If anything was helpful to you, let me know. I love reading and responding to all the comments that I get. So that's all I have for this video though. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.